So I'm excited to be here. This is a cool topic for me. Without further ado, about me. I am the CISO for Motorola Mobility. I've been the CISO for Motorola Mobility since it's been in existence, as we split off from Motorola. If you wish to follow me on Twitter, I'm Secrich. Easy enough, it makes no sense, but just go with it on that side of it. I have a crazy family. My 4 kids do not want to follow in their father's footsteps of anything technical or anything yet. We have conversations. 2 of the common conversations that I usually end up with is my 2 daughters, and one's complaining that the other one broke into her Facebook account and posted things. And I look at my daughter and I say, "Did you do it?" And she goes, "She had a crappy password." And at that point, you're like, wow, karma comes back and hits you every single time. The second instance is I help sponsor an event in Chicago called Hack for Kids. It's a kids security conference with everything else. My youngest daughter was in there. And I had a couple of parents come out, and they go, "You need to change your Netflix password." I'm like, did my daughter give out the password in front of it? No. She talked about how to create secure passwords and used your Netflix password as an example. And I'm going, am I going to live to see 50? I'm not sure. I've been doing this a really, really long time. I do have experience on both sides of the fence. I did veteran security startups. I did Secure IT, VeriSign, and air defense, all successfully acquired, all done very successfully on that side of it. I've also been on the corporate side. I work for some of the largest companies in the world, both GE and Siemens, and now Motorola. So I can go from both sides of this, and I understand. And it was very interesting in today because I've played both sides of the attack and the defense. I could tell you it is so much easier to play on the attacking side than on the defensive side. You sleep a lot better at night, I can tell you that. And one of the other key items that he brought up was an extremely point, is for some bizarre reason, and it has nothing to do with this, the only way we can make our networks more secure is by adding complexity into them. We're just dooming ourselves to failure at this point in time. And we don't really have a choice. We kind of made our bed and we have to sleep in it. And this is a huge problem that we have to work with and work around in some of the cases. So about the gaming area, I'm an avid gamer. I've got 4 kids, yes. I play everything across the sun and everything else. So I started looking at security and gaming when I first started looking at this topic and said, hey, there's a lot of correlation between this. And we're not just talking about lag, we're talking about a lot of different things. So one of the big ones that I want to bring up is what I refer to as security camping. For how many gamers do we actually have in here? Okay, we've got a few. Okay, you can raise your hands, it's not a bad thing. So what camping actually is the ability that people I don't want to go run around, I'm not that good, so I'll just hide somewhere. And then when I see somebody, I shoot them from a long distance or anything else. Typically kind of like a sniper scenario and everything else. And most of the people after a while go, really? Can't you do something else besides stand there? And they will hunt you down and kill you, usually. And it's usually by a 12-year-old you can hear laughing across the mic at the other end of the phone. But it's one of those things that goes into it. But we do this in the security organization as well. We focus on something so closely, we miss everything else. And there's some key areas that we constantly see this in. The IR process, the incident response process. We will get focused on this. We will write a book. It will cover pages and documentation, call lists. Here's our liaisons and everything else. The second that thing is published, we sign it off. Hey, go to the CIOs, CSOs. Let's everybody see this. Go to the board so they know we have one. It's out of date. But there's been 2 reorgs in marketing by then. One in HR. The liaison that was in HR is now left, so you don't have anybody. And no one figures this out until, oops, break out the book. Okay, call the person. Number's been disconnected. This is the problem that you run into. You come so focused, you miss the larger areas. You don't figure out how to do this in a regular area. We're really big about data center because people say, hey, my SAP, hey, it's put into the data center. It's safe. We want to focus all this money and effort and lots of things and bells and whistles and lights and blinky things and things that don't blink. You put all this time and effort in there, and then you realize that, yeah, it's at a third party, and they had an issue with the SAS 70 report, and yeah, anybody at one point in time could walk in and plug in and breach our whole network. And you put a lot of money and effort in that, and the simplest thing gets by you because you're trying to look so closely at this. And that's where the value actually is. Or someone gets popped with malware that happens to be the administrator for one of the DBAs, and you end up with a data breach. We focus on our perimeter. We're like, oh, nothing can get through. Sorry, our perimeters today are like Swiss cheese. It would take anybody not to be able to get through our perimeters in most cases with that. I think our safest place is probably outside. Most organizations, the internet is a safer place than the environment inside your network. And this is one of the things you can't see. And if you're so focused in on the target, like this, you don't see the ancillary sides around you. And you will not have time to react to it, and you will never ever see it coming. And you're taken completely by surprise. And you do get owned by a 12-year-old. And you can tell, because we like to use marketing terms, like laser focused. It's like, no, bad idea. Because you're camping at that point in time. If you're that focused on something, you realize that you're camping. You're missing the bigger picture on that side of it. So, Argo, for those, that's dealing with aggression. And what kind of aggression it is? Well, you're attracting things to attack you. So it's a focus of aggression that's there. In the game, it could be useful. Places like to use it. In security, it's really about your attack surface. And our attack surfaces are immense, huge. We go well beyond what we were protecting last year. It's almost like in 2x. Call it a different kind of law. Richard's law. Hey, your attack surfaces goes by 2x every year. Because it literally does. Because guess what? Before, it didn't have mobile phones. Now you got mobile phones. Next year, it'll be applications. It keeps growing and growing and growing. Now the problem you get into it is where and how that attack surface is extremely important. You want to control your Argo. You don't want to say, hey, come beat me up. And it happens. We do this all the time. If you don't believe it, it's like, hey, stick a server out. Just try it. Put it in your DMZ, add a DNS record, and go start the stopwatch. People have done it before. It doesn't take long before else since it was like, I'm attacking it. Why? Because it's new. It attracted attention. It was something that changed, and the ripple effect decided to get it there. Now, I like to use the term shark in the waters for this. And there's a couple of things. You don't want to piss off people. Be blunt. You don't want to piss off security researchers. You don't want to piss off somebody that's reporting a website vulnerability to you. You don't want to piss off a group of people. One term you should never, ever, ever use is a term called theoretical. Time and time again, people love to use this term, and you're like, oh, that's a theoretical. You want me to make it practical? It's just a little bit of code. And we get caught up in this. So one of the key areas, you have to know how the attackers look at your network. And I'm talking about outside. No information. What do you look like? What does your name servers pull down? What is your DNS information? What does the registry say about you? What are all these things externally the attackers are going to look at without ever touching you? Or touching you that you would be able to figure out. They're going to take a look at this information and say, hey, what's actually there? So you have to know your network. And you got to make sure that it's not something that's there. We see it all the time. Oh, this record's there. And this comes back from doing pen tests and everything else. So it was like, hey, this backup server, guess what? It's not patched. oh, this other DNS, it does both internal and external DNS resolution. People go after these things, and they continue to go after. It's one of the things that are there. They take a look at the outside, and all your weaknesses, everything that you haven't done exactly 100%, they're going to see before that. And so they will glom onto that, and they will attack it. You see it. You see it with the vulnerabilities, whether it's Freak, whether it's Heartbleed, whether it's Shellshock. They will see it. They will scan you. They will come after what's actually there. So as part of gaming, there's what we refer to as grinding and farming, which are different between the two. But grinding is kind of the daily activities. I've got to go one place, I got to go to another, I got to do this, I got to do this to level up. That's what we do. Got to go check the logs, got to do this. It's not some of the stuff that we really like to do. It's kind of the mundane kind of stuff that we deal with. But it's something we do on a regular automation. Automation is good. Now, you'll see me say automation is good, automation is evil. Which one is it? Depends. It's the hacker answer for that. Or the CISO. It depends. Guess what? What you're trying to do really depends on whether automation is the best tool suited for this. If it's repetitive, over and over and stuff, and if you're just looking for a binary operation, automation is good. If the outcome is going to be different, automation is going to be bad, because then I got to think about logic. People are like, ooh, you can shell a lot of logic, but it's time consuming, and you may not be right. So look at things like IP lookups. That kind of automation, hey, go look and find all the information I can find about it to give me some ancillary data. That is a good use of automation. Account management. Which accounts is expired. Make sure they're not existing anymore. That's good automation. Log analysis, not so good unless you're just looking for details, such as are there any 522 Microsoft event IDs running through, which is kind of a hash to hash event that people look for. But one of the things you typically don't want to do, there's a lot of tools, and I'm not a vendor basher or anything else, but typically your automation is your automation, your group's automation, your company's automation. You don't necessarily want to buy it because it's kind of the square peg and round hole. Sometimes it fits, sometimes it's much bigger. Like, do I really want to spend the money on this because it does this one thing that I need, but it does 22 other different things? If you don't need the other 22, it's not a really good fit. So I like to go with the ideas that build it. You know your network, you know your infrastructure better than anyone else. You know what is grinding, what is going around, what you have to do every time. And if you do, it's much easier to build it than do it. And this is one of the key areas that you get into. Oops. So, my next favorite topic, lag. Lag kills. End of discussion. You can always blame it on lag too. It's kind of like the thing. Hey, in a game, it's like, boom, it was lag, sorry. You got me on that one. But lag is a gamer term for delay. It's like, oh, the controller lagged, the network lagged, the Xbox lagged, the PlayStation lagged, my PC lagged. We do it on a regular basis. It's blamed for everything. It's kind of like the gaming version of the firewall. What's wrong? It's the firewall's fault. But it's usually associated with networks, slow down, things like that. But you also have to remember that people lag. And you can tell the people lag. If you think about it, someone that cannot make a decision, you know that person, well, I don't know what's going to happen. If you put them in a decision or an IR response process that says you need to make a decision in 15 minutes, their head will explode. But these are something, you need to know this, because you do not want them in the process of trying to make something that's there. Do we take the website down, yes or no? Right or wrong, you got to pick a side. So it is part of the decision process, and people will lag and they become paralyzed. They literally cannot make a decision on that. Now, one of the other things, you succumb to lag. Gamers, everybody, there is a lag portion that's out there. You get delayed, and you will get killed by a 10-year-old, by an 8-year-old. It happens, but the problem is it goes around. And the process is lag will impact you. If you delay, and vulnerability reports is one of my favorites. Why? Because I turn those things in to people. Found a bug, here you go. And it pisses me off. I send one and 14 days. Hey, what's up? It'd be nice if you told me that you got this. And so this is some of the stuff you run back into. That just is going to infuriate somebody, and somebody's going to go, hey, guess what? Boom, here you go. Fix this ODave. And now you're dealing with a whole separate problem. Regardless of whose fault, you pointing fingers, hey, we didn't patch it in time, etc. At the point, it's gone, it's out. That broke down at like some bad marriage, so guess what? It's over with. IR process is key too. Key to the time that's actually there. You have to be able to work with this. And always know that a problem that you're trying to solve in this process will never correct itself. It's not like, oh, cover this up, it'll go away. Does data breach? No, it didn't really happen. We have no proof of exfiltration, therefore it did not happen. Yeah, people are laughing, they've been, that's an old school way of going like, can you make this disappear? No! So this is one of the issues you get into. So a lot of games are multiplayer. And people are always like, oh, multiplayer, it's fun, you're playing against people. But I don't like to play in the world where people can attack me. I like to be in the nice rainbows and unicorns. Doesn't exist. Unplug the internet, stay away. Multiplayer is always player versus player. But you also have to think of it as security is a team sport. It is a team. You have a team of people. Use them. Or maybe not. And if you don't have a team of people, you have a team of friends. If you don't have a team of friends, buy some. They're called consultants. They will come. They'll be your friend. But it's all one of the things. Anytime you want to do something, you bring your group. It's kind of like gang warfare. I bring mine, hey, we show up all together. And there's a reason for that. Especially when you're doing processes. Incident response, correcting problems, other things. The more people you have, decisions are being made without a lot of thought and a lot of process and a lot of times. It's for lack of a better term, gut in some cases, knowledge in some cases, and sometimes you need the person to sit back and go, what about this server that's in Turkey? When we cut this connection, it's going to lose, and that means all our VPN traffic for the rest of Asia is now gone. Oops, don't cut that circuit. But sometimes you need the person to have some insight that you may not have to be able to go, hey, wait a second. But it's also one of the things as you get into it. They help make decisions. Do you have this? And one of the things to ask people is when you say, can you go do this? Yeah, you got this? You sure? Yeah, I got it. Don't know about me. It doesn't help. And one of the ground rules on the security team is like, I can ask you 15 times if you got this. Don't get pissed at me. Because I want to make sure, because if it falls on the floor, bad things happen. If it doesn't happen, or you say, hey, I can do this in 30 minutes, and 30 minutes is now gone, you're like, oh, it's going to take a little bit longer. No. We need 30 minutes or less. So this is one of the things that's there. And always, do you need help? Sometimes most security people are like, no, I need quiet. And you're like, okay, here's your headphones back. Go. And then everybody's just looking at him as he types feverishly on the keyboard. You hear backspace. So it's one of the things that's there. And it's multiplayer, so you have the players to bring to the thing. So power leveling, one of my favorites. Because why? We're doing it. Power leveling is that. This is a map of wow. This is, hey, guess what? You run around like a chicken with your head cut off, going to 15 different places and takes 3 days. Versus this way, which I used a little bit of help from my friends that said, hey, go here, do this, do that, do this, do that. Much shorter, much faster. So power leveling is about knowing a strategy to get better. That's what a security conference is all about. That's why we're here today, is to power level our own characters, for lack of a better word, ourselves. You can learn from friends, you can learn from strangers, and I really did not want to put this in there, but after this morning I said, I guess I'm an old guy, so therefore you can learn from old guys too. This also works when you take it and go into your vertical market. People are like, whoa, okay. This is what you would classify as, you need to mark this client confidential, so privileged information, therefore the lawyers can't look at it. If you work with vertical markets, never ever tell the lawyers of your organization. I know it's bad, but they'll just get in the way in some cases. But you don't have to make it a working. You go for beers, you go for drinks, you go for lunch. Everybody pays their own bill, but learning from other people, and the security folks, I have to admit, working in the vertical market, they will share information. They will talk to each other, they will tell you what their problems are, issues, hey, have you seen this and that? Because guess what, in the vertical markets, targeted attacks, all this other stuff is huge because they're going after different portions of industry. And using your competitors or frenemies or whatever you wish to call them is a great way to share information to keep them. Hey, this is what we saw. Did you see this? Yes, no. No, we didn't see this. Well, be on the lookout for it. Is that a competitive advantage or disadvantage? I don't know. But I like to use the term, I don't want to be in the lifeboat by myself. It sucks. And that is a key area. And my favor that I do for that will probably be repaid at some point in time because they will get hit with the next round of stuff. Works in the community. Communities share information. Very close knit. We have groups from Chicago. We have our own communities that set up and meet on a regular basis. Everything from city government to aviation to other sides, all intersharing information without any other entities involved in the mix. I'm not a big fan of government sharing. Not that it doesn't work. The problem is that it's a one-way street most of the time. Hey, if you share with us, yeah, we'll get back to you on that. And you're like, really? And now you're starting to see, at least in the US side, that they're kind of pissed because we're all sharing with everybody and we're kind of like, hey, you had your chance, go away, we're not going to talk to you. But we want to protect you. We saw that before. Not so sure about that. So, government sharing, if you're involved in it, it works great. If you're not involved in it, you're not missing much for that much side of it. Just check Twitter. It's perfectly fine. Sharing is great. I like to do what I refer to as a trial by fire. It's great for looking things. I like to conduct hunting parties. People are like, whoa, what is that? Sounds like you take the things out and, hey, go get this clay target. Oh, sorry. No, hunting parties, we're looking for stuff on the network. We gather a bunch of people in a room. We say, hey, let's go find things. What indicators do we have? What are we seeing? What's there? Let's go get it. And we do. We find stuff from binaries, hashes, network IP addresses, here, here, here. And everybody works together because it forms a synergy that works really good. People get used to, hey, we can go through this. It also brings people in from the outside of the org, and it helps them as well because they, hey, okay, now I know who to go get from this pieces of information on that. I love to invite executives because they're like, whoa, this stuff's going, what? We got stuff going on there. Is this going to be safe to get on the network? No, 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 don't get on the network. this is some of the areas that are there. Executives are great to bring to events like this. It's an eye-opening experience for most of them. Whether it be any kind of security event that's really a conference that's dealt with knowledge, learning, and stuff along those nature. It is hugely important and impactful for these organizations, because I would personally love to bring people that was like, oh, our SAP system, and then go, look, SAP, you should go sit through all these topics for me and tell me how bad it's going to be. This is some of the stuff you want to get back to the people that have this information. NPCs, non-player characters. They're part of the story. Without them, it would be a really boring game, because you wouldn't talk to anybody, because you couldn't, unless the other character wanted to talk to you. And if I was that way, I'd be like, I'm not going to talk to this character. Leave me alone. He's following me around now. Non-player characters, yes. You have to have them. But you also think of them in the IT security space. These are your cloud providers. These are your help desk. This is your supply chain. These are people that you depend upon to make a product, make your support actually function. So you have to sit down and think about it. If you need them to make a story, you need to use them. Now, don't abuse them, because they will just stop not talking to you. But you need to use them for what they're there for. Use the supply chain to figure out, hey, how things are moving, materials. Again, a lot of the supply chain folks are the ones that reach deep inside your organization to go to data on that side. If they have malware, it reaches deep inside your system to go to the data. And time again, it's like, hey, this is on this trusted administrative VPN access that, oh, doesn't have any firewall, doesn't have anything, it just has IP address, and that's it. And they can go to, yes, these two IP addresses, which are the critical servers of the company. Understand that. Always remember, when you're dealing with non-player characters, who pays the bill? Sometimes they forget that. They're like, oh, that's not in our contract. Yeah, so is SLA, so is this, so is that we've overlooked, and okay, I guess we're going to have to terminate this. Again, a lot of times they don't want to do things because at the end of the day, maybe you didn't strike the best deal in the world. They thought you told them you were going to buy more, you didn't buy more, therefore they're kind of not upset with you, but hey, we're trying to count on this $1 million deal and it's only a $500,000 deal, and we're kind of like miffed at this. Well, you signed the contract, you live with it. So dealing with new characters, knobs, newbies. In the games, they're the ones that are like, oh my gosh. You need to embrace it. You're like, what? I'm not going to embrace an 8-year-old. It's in the game environment. Security-wise, embrace the people coming out of school. And then you're like, oh, they drive me nuts. That's good. But the one thing they have is passion. I've seen it time and time again. You go, here's a terabyte of log files. Can you go through this? You're like, he'll be back in 2 weeks. Next morning, he's in your office waiting for you. Here's your report. And you're like, whoa, stop that. First, you're making me look really bad. Second, I'm going to abuse you if you do that again. Because it's like, wow, how did you process this? You watch it. No, I didn't process anything. I went hand sorted through this. You're like, whoa. But there's a passion is the key. They want to learn, know anything, and they eat it up. You don't have to spoon feed it to them. It's not an old dog learning new tricks. It's a puppy. And you can teach it anything you want to, and they're wanting to learn. Now, I'm sorry for all those students in there. I just called you a puppy. Please forgive me. But it is true. The youth in this, the knobs and newbies that are just coming into this, don't have all the baggage that we have. to be quite honest, that governance, regulatory, and compliance issue, they're not, by the time they're done with this, they're probably never even heard of that. They're going back to, hey, look, malware, workstations are evil. they've got it right in a lot of cases because they're in the new area versus trying to be drawn into the new area. Teach, you mentor them, attach them to your employees. Here, sit with him. Rotation, now move over here. They like it, they know it. You have, for lack of a better term, you have backup training, but at the same time, at least the knowledge doesn't happen. If someone gets hit by a train, you're not like, oops, no one knows anything. And at worst, you can use them for cannon fodder. Hey, go distract the director. Why we do something that we're not supposed to do. So, they're not just in the security market. We have interns, we have other things. Go find them, seek them out. Because again, they're high tech, they're cool. They see things that you want to be able to see. And it's really cool to embrace that and get them to be deputized. You can't run an organization by yourself. It's huge, it's problematic at best to try to run something so big. But if you get deputies, hey, marketing is standing up another website through this third party. I think you should know about it. Oh, okay. I will go have a conversation with the director of marketing. Before, you would never even known it was there until, hey, here comes this PR announcement. And you're like, oh, let me bang my head on my desk. But this becomes your process that's there. Leverage and use them. AI, I really think it's misused. It's often abused by vendors. Hey, we do, as we term AI, or we do machine learning. You're like, oh, you're writing parsers. Now you're having the machine write parsers that write parsers. That is not intelligence, that's parsers. One of the things that time and time again, and if you talk to anybody, they really get back to is person versus machine. And then there's no, hey, you can sort, I can get as elastic as I need to get. I can do a lot of processing power at the end of the day. And maybe I'll find stuff. I probably will. But as you start digging, the unknown of unknown is always going to win because there's something there. And the only person that's going to actually find it is the person. And you can call it a gut feeling. You can call it some knowledge locked away. They look at something and they go, that's not right. Ping never sends 2 packets, ever. Why is there 2? Not 4, 2. You can't even hit Control-C fast enough. So what's up with that? Why is that way? They'll find it. They'll dig and there's something wrong. I'm hanging on to this. And you're like, move on. They're like, no, there's something here. And sure enough, lo and behold, there's something there. But it is part of the process, and it's part of the intelligence and part of the people process that we kind of slightly left behind. And we're getting back to this. You need people to be able to do the things that you need to be able to do. Glitches, they exist. They're software errors, we've seen them, they're in games. Hey, this treasure reappears 40 million times. You can't get killed here, I can hide behind this rock, it's transparent, I can shoot through it. Whatever it is, we all know these, and all too well. On our network, there are vulnerabilities that need patching. We've got to fix them. We have more of them than we have days in the week, for the most part of them. The problem is that if you start sitting there and thinking about it, and it's like, if you think you have issues on this, you always have, oh, if we crash this, the server's bad, oh, we're really in trouble. The same thing goes for the other side of this as well. Now, part of the issue with cloud, I like to refer to it as kind of slightly less glitchy, because if you take an overall summary of it, it doesn't go down for the most part of it. Most of the cloud providers and services that are well orchestrated, well done, they stay up. Now there are outages I will be the first to admit there are outages. But if you take that and say, oh, look, it was down, shame on it. It's in the cloud, that's the reason. And it's like, well, there's probably a bunch of other reasons, but if you would have took that into your own internal network, how many times would it have been down? Usually there's a pretty good sized factor that it's not. So in some cases where you don't want glitches and you don't want stuff, hey, the cloud does make a thing. Just remember, it's out of your control. It's a non-player character. You're giving them stuff. Hopefully they'll keep it. But it's one of the other things that's there. Now, part of games is always the Easter eggs. And the Easter eggs are just that. It's one of the things. It's the hidden messages inside of applications, which at this point, if Easter eggs should never exist, if you look at secure lifecycle for code development, it is not. Somebody should have looked at this and said, hey, we do not need to put all the names of the developers in their pictures. Doesn't exist, bad. Well, apparently it's okay, and it still exists today. You see it in there. They hit a full version of Microsoft Flight Simulator in Excel. That should tell you where those 15 million lines of Chrome exist. Hey, there's an online game with the Tyrannosaurus jumping over cactus or something. Like, really? Okay. But this is some of the stuff you get into, is that there are always these hidden things. But from a bad guy's version of Easter eggs, they leave things behind because they're really bad at cleaning up themselves. So they leave their tools. Why? Because they may come back, or they may still be there, but they'll leave their tools. They have reverse shells, hash dumpers, net sniffing things, because they don't want to use your tools, because your tools log to the Windows server, and that kind of shows off stuff. These typically don't in some cases, and these typically do different things. So these are tools that you search for on a regular areas. Now, you'll never find all the Easter eggs. You can talk to the US State Department about this. It's like, hey, we're shutting down our mail system. We're shutting down the network. We're turning everything off because we can't get these people out of our network. As I report to it, burn it all down. You saw that. For those not familiar with the New York Times hack last year or so, they literally pulled up dumpsters and threw equipment in the dumpsters. Took everything out because they were told to. Rightfully, wrongfully so. Sometimes that's the best way because you have no idea what's infected and what's not infected. And I don't care. It's very difficult to unroot these people in more times than there. But if you look at it, I need to search for things like IP address, hashes, processes, DNS requests, files, registry keys. If I don't have those simple functionalities inside my enterprise, shouldn't hunt for Easter eggs at all. So if I can't search for it, you're going to never be able to find the Easter eggs. They're already there. They will remain hidden, or your replacement will actually go find them because they will do bad things in the network. No guarantee that. And they probably already are in some of the cases. So if you can't look for this, it's kind of one of the basics that need to be able to be done because they're there every single time. Now, tanking. So what a tanking is somebody that gets lots of armor, lots of buffs and everything else and says, hey, I can take a hit. Rule number one, there are no such thing as mage tanks. I don't care what anybody says. There are no mage tanks. They wear cloth armor. Can't do anything. I don't care. This is the problem with that. We have these common myths of mage tanks. These are called compliance. Sorry, I'm not a big compliance person per se. I don't think a piece of paper is really going to protect me in a lot of cases. PCI. Hey, look, we have PCI compliance for yesterday. Okay, now we put everything back the way it was. Policy and procedures. Look, we have this book of procedures that we told everybody and signed a piece of paper that said, yes, they're going to follow. That's not protecting you and telling you what people are doing. Having it's good. It's a requirement. Don't rely on it. Don't say, hey, I'm PCI compliant. I am safe. No, you get good. You get your awesome armor, you get your stuff, and it's one of the things that's there. You increase the specs that matter. You increase the ability to say, hey, I can respond to stuff. I'm not worried about preventing it. I know it's going to happen. I want to be able to detect and respond to that much quicker than they have, which gives me a beneficent of a thing. If you look at our attack surface is static. We don't change it. Why? Because if we changed it, oh, that would cause problems. Hey, this IP address is really now over here. Hard to do. But the problem is that detection and response and time is equal to mobility. I can change stuff. I can change firewall rules. I can change things on the thing. I can add different things into environments. I can reroute traffic if needed. Giving that flexibility gives me the specs that actually matter, and I know how to fight. Now, one of the big things on tanking, as I look at it, is IR. Your incident response, something bad's happening. You're going to have to take a hit. You don't sit back and go, we're not going to comment on that. It's going to make it worse. It's like my kids. What did you do? You're going to get mad at me if I tell you. No, I'm not. You're grounded. It's one of the things. You have to be able to take the hit. You have to be able to deflect the information that's there. Parry and then come out with something good. PR firms are really good at this. It's called spin. They'll spin anything into a good thing, and you have to get it to spin appropriately. Now, not all games are alike. There are many different types. They're like organizations. Not all organizations are alike. What works in one does not necessarily work in another one. Always play the game that you can win. If you cannot win, go for the tie. Don't say don't play, because you don't really have a choice. If you don't play, okay, shut the doors, let's move. We're out of this business. You're not going to do that. Go for a tie. Figure out how to get the tie. In a lot of cases, everyone's playing for a lot of ties. Not for any other reason, because we don't have the budget or the money to say, hey, these threat actors that have nation-state kind of support, including our own nation, really can't compete at that level. So what do? Well, I play for the tie. And again, not all organizations make the games that we want to choose. Realize some games you'll lose, understand why, go back and play again. This time to play to a tie, or maybe play to the win. Work inside and understand really the who, what, where. How the games are being played internally. Whether you want to call this politics or whether you just want to call it ear to the ground, and it's one of the comments that was brought back up, is, oh, this is really not good because this information is not so, we don't want to release this. And it's back to the same thing. It's a lot of understanding, it's a lot of trust. And it's good to have the trust, and it's easy to develop. They see it, they go, you're on top of it, I'm not going to worry about it. Trust me, an IR process is much easier when you run something and your CEO sends thanks when you send him a message, hey, we got something going on. And he's like, thank you. And it's like, no questions, no nothing. They know that, hey, it's under control. That is a huge win for that side of it. Versus now he's contacted 15 of other people, and they're all contacting you going, hey, what are you doing about this? And you're like, oh, I'm answering emails, not working. So this is one of the things that's there. Final boss. All games have them. The big thing at the end that comes out and tries to kill you, and you spend 35 minutes trying to kill it, and then you die 5 or 6 times and everything else. The problem with security, there is no final boss. It is never over. It is always something going on. You feel like you're in a grocery store and it's like clean up on aisle 6, clean up on aisle 7. Ouch. I'd like to say I'm the chief janitor officer because I'm cleaning up messes most of the time. But it is not over. And oh yeah, by the way, I love cleaning up messes. I love what you do. Most security people really have a passion for what they're actually doing. Final thoughts? Thank you very much. I really appreciate coming out and speaking. If you need to get a hold of me, SecRich is fine. rrushing at Motorola. To answer the question, there is no extra life when you're at a CSO level. So you better grab all the power-ups, all the buffs, all the potions, all the spells, scrolls, anything that will help you against the horde, because it is a horde. You're completely outnumbered, outclassed, outmatched, but it's going to be fun. Oh yeah, self-resurrecting is allowed. Thank you very much.
That was great stuff. Glad you made it this year.
Thank you.
We have some minutes for Q&A. Go ahead, guys.
Oh, I'm scared of you. No, I'm not going to take a question for you.
You expected that, didn't you?
I expected that.
So I'm going to stick with the analogy. So in tanking, one of the things, maybe you could share some of it, that you have a practice on that I think will be tanking, and it's logs.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a compliance that requires you to keep logs for whatever. But is that enough?
Okay, log question and compliancy question. Ooh, confidential information. No. You have a couple of different logs question. There is a data retention policy that all companies have that say we can keep logs for so much. If you ever tell a lawyer you keep logs over that period of time, head will explode or twist around sideways and spew vomit or whatever. So you have to be careful of that side of it. The issue with logs is you have a lot of times when you're discovering something, like, oh, someone releases a report or anything else, and they look at the dates, and this is research done 6.5 months ago, 8 months ago, and you're like, my logs go back 90 days. This is really helpful. Not really. So this is part of the issue. Logs are good to have around forever. Now, logs that are online, searchable, and used should not be around forever. They should match what your data retention policy is. So if you back up logs or put them in archive or some of the other stuff, you can usually talk to your e-discovery person or your data retention person and say, hey, this is there. Because the data retention people go, we don't want to have logs for everything that go back forever. But a good way is at least a year's worth of logs, because most of the stuff you see is dated back to the point where you're not going to be able to find things. And that's kind of critical, very critical in a lot of cases, because, hey, I got this IP address or this DNS name. Did it go back? Oh, we can't tell. That really is kind of a downer, because you're like, I know it did. And you can't find things. So that's one of the key areas for that.
So if you're only compelled, not classified information that's tagged in the way that has to be discovery.
Yes.
If the average breach or threat actor is living in the network for 250 days, and you only have 90 days of logs.
It's not going to do you a bit of good until, yeah, and this is why you have a lot of the places that have such a hard time clearing out the threat actors, because they'll come in, they'll plant themselves, they'll immediately, once they're supplanted, they'll change their code and migrate to something else, hopefully that you won't actually see it. So you'll see the ones that are talked, but you miss one or two. It only takes one. They got in once before, they'll get in again. It's not like they can't get in and out at kind of free will for most of these cases. So, but having the logs is hugely important on that side, because you can go back and validate what's there, what's actually outside of that, and things. Another question for logs. External logs going out are much more important than what's coming in. Retaining logs for like your e-commerce system environment, practical and good, but typically contain a lot of PII information, which is kind of data breach material. So you don't necessarily, hey, our web server logs, which have all this data in here, are retained for a year, because that makes your data portion very huge. So that was one of the things I'd rather worry about external logs rather than trying to gather things that are
Be
coming
a
into
liability in that respect.
keeping that much data around. Other questions? Yes.
So I know a company in Holland that believes in mage tanking to some extent. The mirror image type of continual mage tanking. What do you think about that?
There is no mage tanking, rule number one. It's back to the same thing. It's kind of one of those things that says, okay, practically it works, but at the same time, you're guessing for what current is available. And it's all about what you see, not necessarily in the future and what's going to happen next. And it's one of the issues that comes in. If you don't sit down and figure out that, hey, I don't need this, I can go rapidly recover my stuff or anything else. And you look at things such as, hey, we don't need all these sophisticated tools or lightweight, we'll just blow things in and completely reflash if something goes wrong. The new ways people are getting in, USB, browsing, hijacking, other sides of it, you're only as good as what you actually developed for, not what is coming down the pipe. So at one of the points in times, it's going to be like we've seen, is that you have a security curve that says, hey, this is really popular and we fix it. But we never really fix it. It's like goes away for a year and a half and then all of a sudden it peers back up again. That's the kind of stuff that will defeat the mage tanks on time and time again with that.
Resiliency actually benefits the attacker if their backdoor's still in the.
Oh, well, we've seen things of people modifying Citrix images and things like that. It's like, hey, look, all your vendors now have our malware. And you're like, great. So that's one of the areas that's there. I hope, does that answer good enough? Or we can talk more offline if you want to. Any other questions?
Thanks again, Richard.
Thank you very much.